Board games, board games. It's not what I'm talking about so much today. Board games but mainly books. I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing. And over here, I have some books. I'm going to let you take a look at The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. This is one of the favorite books of me. One of my favorite books. That's very awkward phrasing, but the Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Something that's been part of public consciousness. I'll demand that I talk about new rules for classic games made by Wayne Schmittberger. That's the author's name. And finally, we've got this magazine, Wyrd Science. It's quite cute, like Wheezing. It's about RPGs. Books, 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 it's what I'm talking about. And magazines, yeah, I'm not gonna shout. Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. I hope that you are generally well. And yeah, this is episode 347 of Busy Beats and Board Game Blether. I am going to be talking about a few different things. I am streaming every day for the next 53 days at 10 a.m. UK time, and I hope that you're all generally well. Today, I am going to be reviewing a bunch of books, and oops, there we go. Sorry about those brief audio issues. So yeah, a bunch of books, as I was saying. And I'm going to start off with Wyrd Magazine. I'm going to chat about this, which is a classic book. I mean, this is, if I'm going to tell, basically, this is a lovely magazine. It's about story games. It's about games that allow us some form of expression. It's got some great articles. It's got some great graphic design. I like it. This is New Rules for Classic Games. It's not just about new rules for classic games. It's about a whole bunch of totally original games. It's not just about janky house rules. There's a whole chapter which is giving you inspiration, and it's clear and concise. Honestly, it's how many pages? 2, 3, 4. It's got a 6-page chapter at the end about how to make your own house rules, and I think this is brilliant for any game designer, for anyone who's really invested in the nature of what games can be, specifically with a view to mechanics and abstraction. I will briefly talk about two of my favorite books that I've read recently. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I've not read the second part of this, and The Little Prince, which are just charming books. They are perfectly fine reading for any child. They are perfectly fine reading for any adult. And that is the nature of a great children's book. And I might be chatting a wee bit about the nature of audience or whatever. But yeah, before I get to that, I would like to spend about 5 or 10 minutes talking about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So if you're watching this and you've not been part of this show before, or even if you have, let me tell you that I am always interested in you. I'm interested in all the things that you do. So if you've done something that makes you proud, then feel free to give us a shout. Type in the comments whatever you've done, and whether it's been an achievement or simply to share the fun. I started off yesterday with a chat about media in board games. I did a bit of writing, which was a good achievement. I had a lovely chat with Antoine, Mason, Anna Vassenberg, Matt Warwick, and Yoda. Four amazing. I was really happy with how the show went, and hopefully we'll have many more great shows. Did a bit of walking. I wandered into the other side of town, and I went. Just 1 second. I do apologize. And I had a wander into the middle of town, enjoyed the sun, enjoyed the sights, enjoyed the streets of Glasgow, which were somewhat vacant. It was a good walk. Then, of course, I enjoyed myself heartily on Idle Michael's stream, which was a game show. I came second, so close to first. I had it. I was so close. I was neck and neck with Ken, then 1 point behind. Then in the final round, just Ken took the lead, and I was like, yeah, Ken had like 4 points. I scored 0. But yep, there were amazing prizes on offer: some mystery wine, some mystery food, and a teddy bear. But that is some of the highlights of yesterday. What were your highlights? Let me know. And of course, if anyone has any questionably quick questions, then feel free to chime in. What are some of your questionably quick questions? The first thing that I always like to ask myself is, what time is it? Where am I? I am in Glasgow, Scotland. It is 10:07 a.m. and the sky outside is incredibly white. Okay, so if there's anything else that you would like to ask, feel free to ask away, and I will get to it in between talking about other things. And the final regular section that I always like to make sure I get to is talking about something that's brilliant, something with a wee bit of positivity. Let's talk about a brilliant thing, what's a little thing which is brilliant? I am going to lead into the main topic. I am going to talk about, let me actually raise the camera. I'm going to talk about paper. I think that paper is just fairly brilliant. And hello to me. It is lovely to have you join us. I think that paper is just such a brilliant thing. Having colors across it, being able to read, being able to take it out, take a book outside, sit down on a bench, sit down. It's just a wee bit nicer. For me, at least, it's a wee bit of a nicer feeling when I smell the paper. This book doesn't smell particularly nice. When I smell the paper, that's a nicer book. Let me smell these ones now. Okay, paper definitely has a smell. If I give this one a wee bit of a sniff, there's a bit of an acidy, bitter aftertone to this. Here, there's an earthy smell, a slightly gritty, hearthy smell. It's almost like baked goods. This one and these two smell incredibly similar. And new rules for classic games. This is surprisingly, for such a old book, I don't know when this was printed, 1992, so that's like 28 years old. This has got a fairly fresh smell. This is kind of almost a citrusy smell. And Timmy chimes in to say the Pokemon Yellow manual smelled amazing when I was a kid. yeah, like when you've got paper and then you just smell the ink, smell the paint, smell everything about it. And paper has a tactility. And Mike says paper is great when you paper, scissors, rock. I would call it rock, scissors, paper personally. But I mean, it's good, but it's no better than rock or scissors. I mean, if you always play paper, then I'm always going to beat you. So, but I just think there's something wonderful about the tactility of opening something, about being able to flick back and forth. It's not constraining your view to one screen. And hello, Clea Llewellyn. I am just talking about paper. It is lovely to have you in the chat, and thank you for joining us. Let me give you a shout out. So to me and anyone in chat who isn't already following Clea Llewellyn, please make sure to do so, because Clea is an amazing musician. Llewellyn. Today I am, hopefully that works. There we go. So if anyone else has any questionably quick questions or wants to talk about paper, then feel free to do it. In any case, I am going to get to the main topic, which is reviewing books and magazines in this vague order. So let me start off with Wyrd Science. This is quite a thing. Let me, sorry about this. I'm going to and yeah, paper, love it. How I used to feel when I saw a blank page. It's all the possibilities, but also printed material. I think there's definitely a utility in paper as opposed to, let's talk about magazines. Let's talk about the nature of magazines as opposed to just reading something online, because that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? The question of whether we even need magazines these days. I think the thing about a magazine is that it's not just like Spirits of Tabletop Gaming magazine when it's a PDF, and yeah, sure, they do a great job, but by being printed, it gives it a sense of an extra purpose. It gives it not a sense of it gives it a certain distinction. By being printed, there's a cost involved, and people might be more likely to care a wee bit more about what they're doing because they know this can never be changed. People are actually spending actual money on this. And when you've got paper that you can do things with inks that you just can't quite do, you can lay things around on the page knowing that, okay, I'm showing you this in a slightly rubbish way with being limited by the screen and everything, but the way that you can show the colors, this is session 0 of Wyrd Science, a magazine about games, about role-playing games, about games involving stories. There are mentions of roots. There are mentions of miniatures games. For sure, the paper color is incorporated to present each thing in its best rights. If we go to later on, the Escape the Dark Castle, Escape the Dark Sector, which is all about old-fashioned black and white stuff. And so just for those few pages, those 3 pages are entirely in black and white, drained of all their color to show everything. There is an excerpt from a novel, and honestly, this is just such a lovely love letter. I am not particularly into the role-playing game scene. I am more into party games, into games where the expression is about our real life self rather than an artificial make-believe self. It's not that I'm against role-playing games. I'm very interested anyway. but this is not the kind of thing that I would normally read about. All of these articles are wonderfully written. It's a snapshot of a moment. It's a snapshot of what came out recently. It's a snapshot of not just what came out recently, but indicate what feels important right now. And maybe that's the value of magazines, that they are that snapshot, that it's not just one person's view, it's a collection, it's a working together where this community comes together to say, this is what's important to us. These are the people that are important to us. These are the games that are important to us. These are the moments that mattered, where people talk about the fact that they managed to get through the last year, what's helped them through the last year, and it's just a lovely magazine. I will talk very briefly about the quality of the paper. It's not got the best smell, but it is very thick. It's very high quality, and in terms of graphic design, I'm just generally really impressed. I think, I just want to mention that it's got really nice thick paper on it, and you feel like they give a sense. It bestows upon the words a sense of value, which feels wrong. I mean, it feels kind of gatekeepery. It's like, oh, if you don't have the money to actually mass produce really nice paper, then your words don't have as much meaning. But this is a lovely magazine, and for £8, yep, it's a bit of a pricey one, but yeah, I would say if you're interested in things, maybe, check it out. Maybe have a flick through a couple of the articles and have a look at the contents page. If the contents page seems interesting to you, then the actual quality of the writing will not disappoint. These are accomplished writers. Great job, everyone involved. Mike de Grief says, paper is 2,000 years old and invented in China. Thanks for that wee tidbit. Let me move on to this book, which I will probably spend the most time pondering, which is New Rules for Classic Games. So, New Rules for Classic Games by R. Wayne Schmittberger. Let me actually get rid of that little thing. Just a second. There we go. Okay, so New Rules for Classic Games. This is a really nice book. All of these books that I'm talking about today are really nice books. This book has a really limited audience, though. I would recommend this book if A, you are a board game designer, or you're really interested in board games that are abstract, and maybe you just want to play lots of abstract games and you don't want to keep buying new things. This is really good. This will give you... Okay, let's actually go through it. This is a library copy, which is why it's not the best quality. So we start off with Chapter 1, New Twists on Old Favorites. I'm just going to... I've read through it. I will say that chapters 11, 12, and 13, there might have been some skimming involved in those ones, but the rest of it, I've just really soaked and absorbed every word. So, New Twists on Old Favorites talks about Monopoly, Trivial Pursuit, Chinese Checkers, Boggle, Giotto, Mastermind, Nerf Ping Pong, which I'd never heard of, Hearts, Scrabble type crosswords games, and a brief introduction to things that you can do with chess. In this chapter, we're talking about just simple things that you can do. It's like, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about changing the tables on ping pong? Have you thought about doing these things? Chapter 2 is all about fixing a flaw, where it says, okay, here's some ways that some games have sorted out imbalance in games. For example, the pie rule as applied to hex, or some more complicated versions of the pie rule. Doubling up talks about what you can do if you have two versions of a game that you can eliminate, or in the same way as doing duplicate bridge by kind of reducing. I don't know if you're reducing luck as much as you're making sure that everyone at least goes through the same sequence of cards. Everyone should have the same deal with duplicate bridge, and you can do something very similar with backgammon. How can you change the number of players? None of these are going to rock your world, and frankly, if you are a board game designer who's been doing this for a few years, then maybe you might not have anything that makes you say, oh, wow, I would never have thought of doing that before. It goes into some more variations of popular games like Go, and there is a strong focus on abstract games, for sure. There's a very strong focus on mathematical games, talking about handicaps, talking about how this is a game that uses, this is a book that thoroughly researches what's available, what other games have done in terms of handicaps, what you could do in terms of handicaps. Yeah, for sure, some new ways to use game equipment, which becomes just some games that you might have never heard of, in terms of if you've got a chessboard, if you've got a couple of packs of cards, if you've got these classic games, these are some things that you can try out. Some of the games do require hexagonal grids, which seems like a bit of a big ask, frankly. We've got a chapter all about pen and pencil games, which incorporates Nim and Chomp, which wasn't quite clearly explained for me. And then I found this website online, which is, oh, wow. And the author is essentially being your guide, injecting the prose with little strategy tips, letting you know what you might want to do, talking about, yeah, charades and boardless things, talking about long games and something of their own invention, where it becomes a 4-page diary, essentially, of how they kicked a ball in a golf manner around their large garden. The last these three chapters, beyond backgammon, beyond chess, and let me actually get rid of that, beyond chess and beyond Go. Sorry, there's beyond backgammon, beyond checkers, and beyond chess. These are very much, it's not just, hey, here's a couple of variations, especially in the beyond chess and beyond checkers. It talks about, yes, like with drafts, also known as checkers, when I was a young child, I was astonished to realize that in the continent, in France, they play a completely different version of drafts to what we play in the UK. Here, we can only make small moves. Over there, everything is making big sweeping moves. And then when you get to the end, when you get promoted, you can basically teleport across the board. It talks about this, but it's also, this book is a combination of history, what people have created, the author's own visions. With Beyond Chess, it goes into, yes, here are some Shatranj, here is some things that other people have made, but here are a couple of the author's own invention. For playing by mail, we are talking about simulating dice rolls and modifying things to make things work. And finally, chapter 15, I think, is the best. This one is just 6 pages, and this is 6 pages that is amazing information for anyone who will start working on a book. And I'm going to actually review these 6 pages a bit more in depth. It starts off trying to define what is a good game, trying to talk about depth and then excitement. And I think that the author comes up with a really good definition of what's a good game. Talking about little ways of, hey, here's things that can be nice house rules in a game, and these can apply to literally any game. It talks about ways to give you control of the dice. For sure, this might not be to everyone's taste. It will add complexity, but this is a wide-reaching thing that you can do to adapt any game. Improving players' offensive capabilities. This is one of my big issues with so many abstract games. And so many abstract games end up with, okay, whoever actually goes into the middle is going to lose. And that's a big problem. And so having a book that's talking about make sure you increase the offensive capabilities. This book, frankly, isn't just good for making your own house rules. This book is good for pondering when you're making a new game. And of course, house rules can be the start of a new game. Number 3 suggests increasing player interaction, for example, challenging during Trivial Pursuit. I would agree with that, but I would also suggest couching it in the reminder that not everyone wants to be hampered by those around them. Point number 4, trying to change the object of the game. For example, maybe getting a particular formation. Imagine if in a game of Monopoly, getting hotels on 6 consecutive spaces won you the game. That might actually lead to some reasonable endings. This is a kind of thing where I say, yes, whilst you are designing a game, it's always worth going for some crazy twists, always worth trying out things. Increasing or decreasing the number of pieces or the number of money, and again, this is a game that takes you from a game player, from someone who might have enjoyed and played all these games, from someone who might be, to someone who might be baffled and amazed by everything that's around them. And this chapter alone, frankly, these 6 pages are, to me, the main value that you would get from the book. 7, giving players 2 moves instead of 1. For sure, that's such a massive change. 8, changing the board's geometry. So many people have done that in Go, for example. Simultaneous moves. Trying to equalize things by adding a pie move. And talking about the super call. Yes, super call or call rule in Go, that's kind of what game design is about. Seeing, okay, yes, this rule works, let's apply it where applicable. In the same way that if you're writing, you wouldn't be saying, okay, I'm not going to put 2 clauses together with the word and. Of course you are. There are certain rules of grammar in writing. And so again, there are certain rules. There are certain ways to bring in a handicap. There are certain ways to have a pie rule, to have a co-rule. Like certainly in an abstract game, in the same way that a trick-taking game, a lot of trick-taking games can be seen as immensely inaccessible to those who have not played any trick-taking games before because of the way that they are explained. but it is the formation of a vocabulary, learning what works, learning what doesn't work. And yeah, 12, it talks about applying some of the ideas. Even if you're not interested in chess, try and apply some of those ideas to other games, 100%. And the author finishes off with saying, just remember that the point is to have more fun when you play, and never be afraid to experiment. That's how many of the best games are discovered. There's a lot of encouragement, and that is what I love about this book. It is very much an encouragement. It's very kind. It's written by someone who's immensely excited, passionate, and enthusiastic about all of these things and wants to share that passion. It can be immensely overwhelming. And frankly, I do think that for someone who isn't already interested in games or willing to embark upon that journey, it will be a bit too much. But if you're ready for it, I think that this is a fantastic book. If you want to just be introduced to, I don't know how many, it almost feels like there might be a tagline at the start. If this were a modern book, they probably would have put, oh, all over 100 variations included. And there probably are. And that's the thing. It doesn't just give you those variations. It also gives you the building blocks and the starting point to build up your own. So, yeah, again, very much recommended if you are in that audience. I would like to finish up by talking about these two things. Firstly, The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. A very short book, 109 pages in this printing, but some of the pages do have some quite prominent pictures. And it's, frankly, these pictures are what I find so beautiful. I love the tiny planets. I love the notion of safety and coziness that it gives. Apparently, the prince can travel from planet to planet somehow, but in this world, one character occupies an entire planet. And they are, each of the adults that the prince visits has their own tragic tale. One might be a slave to work. One might be chasing after things that really don't matter. It is very much a commentary upon keeping in touch with your inner child. It could be seen as a parable. I mean, maybe the prince is an illusion. Maybe the prince was ostensibly, the story is told by a pilot who crash lands in a desert, who meets a tiny prince, and this is the land that the prince came from. It's a wonderful story about the prince having to take care of things, little volcanoes that cook breakfast, being able to move the chair a little bit more to watch sunsets. And there's the mixture of these flights of fancy of what would life be like if you had a planet essentially the size of a few houses or even a house. What would life be like in that situation? But you could argue that when the prince moves away and when the prince goes through to see all these conceited individuals, the drunk, these could be seen as character flaws that the pilot has picked up during life. And maybe it's about the pilot getting in touch with the little prince, getting in touch with their inner child. And because the prince represents not just a real character, but, and for sure there is a bit of naivety. I'm not going to say that we all have to be naive little children, but we should have that ideally sense of innocence. And yeah, it's a book to reflect on in many ways. It's a book for children, it's a book for adults, and I love it. Finally, Lewis Carroll, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And specifically, I'm only reviewing the first half of this particular volume, which contains both stories. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This is also way out of copyright, I'm fairly sure. 18, where is it? I can't find. This edition published 1993, but when was it, 1884 or something? Anyway, this has been very much popularized by the Disney films, of course, with the Disney animations, with the coloring of how Alice is. It's almost impossible to see this picture now and not think of Alice in blue and white. There is a real menace in the books. There's a real casual violence. Things like, in the writing, creatures eating other creatures, Alice trying to make sure that Alice doesn't break her neck, smacking other creatures around as a giant. There's almost a subversion in the violence of everything going on. This again, like the magazine that I mentioned, is a snapshot of things with the parodies of with poems of their time. I believe that Lewis Carroll, Charles Dodge, and Charles Dodgson has just done a great job of it. It's immensely surreal. This juxtaposition, the clever wordplay, mock turtle soup. If mock turtle soup is, instead of being mock turtle soup, what if it were created with a mock turtle? What if you could move around and enjoy growing bigger and growing smaller? Of course, the entire thing is essentially thrown off as being just a dream at the end. But there are small elements of when Alice's sister imagines all these things. And again, this feels like it's just inviting us to wonder, giving us fuel for our imagination. And even though almost none of it makes sense, there is just enough internal logic for my tastes to give it a sense of cohesion, given the amount of wonder and lovely flights of fancy that are going on. It's a great book, great story, great writing. Again, these two are things that I would recommend to anybody. This one I would recommend to anybody who's really into games or really ready to embark upon the nature of what games can be. And this magazine, I believe that it's one for those who just want to learn a little bit more about what RPGs and story games and thematic games, and just have another angle. But it's not something where it focuses exclusively on one aspect of gaming. Yes, there is more of a slant on role-playing, more story games and more narrative-driven games, but that's not trying to. But you've still got Dan Jolin, who talks about just general things, and I also really, really need to talk about the beauty of everything going on. Now, that pretty much brings me to the end today. This is going to be quite a short show. I might potentially start another show in a few minutes. But yeah, that's been my recap wrap up. I reviewed these 4 things, and I hope that was enlightening for at least someone. Wyrd Science, New Rules for Classic Games, Little Prince, and Lewis Carroll, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. All things that I'm personally going to probably keep on my bookshelf for quite a while to come. And I should note that with this book especially, this is the kind of book that you could take a year to really delve into all of these rules, to really delve into all of these possibilities. You would need a partner, but if there's 2 of you together, this is going to be, yeah, such a wonderful thing. So for now, it's the end. If you've enjoyed this, stuffbybez.com, stuffbybez.bigcartel.com, twitter.com/stuffbybez, instagram.com/stuffbybez, twitch.tv/stuffbybez, youtube.com/stuffbybez. And of course, please join my Discord, where it's stuffbybez.com/discord. That will redirect you to somewhere where you can talk about design, ask questions if you like. I will answer, other people will answer. And yeah, we have a place to share photos that might make other people smile of cats or whatever. Oh, thank you very much, Clea. That's really nice hearing you say. I want to thank you, Clea, and everyone who's been watching, and I obviously want to thank all the authors of this thing. And so I do want to say quickly that with the word contributors, obviously this is writing contributors, but I do find it a bit, it feels like it would be nice to talk about what they had written rather than just, this is, what are they doing for the magazine rather than just who they are. That's my one. But thank you to all the people who wrote these books, and thank you to Antoine de Saint-Exupéry and Lewis Carroll, also known as, what's Lewis Carroll's real, Charles Darrich? No. But let's just call them Lewis Carroll. Thank you to the authors. Thank you to you. Thank you to people who made the internet. Thank you to people who gave birth to me, I guess, and ancestors, and I guess thank you to the Big Bang. And as we get to the end of the show, I'm going to ask you, over to you, what are you up to? You can share, but only if you want to. What are you up to? What are you going to be doing after this show? I might be having a wee bit of a nap. I had a bit of a, weird headache, and so might be having a wee bit of a nap and doing some more reading and trying to start up my packing, given that I am going to be heading back to my, what I would call my own home in just at the end of the week, which is kind of exciting, given that I've been up here with the parents for quite a few months now. I've got a making dinner date with one of my parents, which is learning how to cook horish de carafes, which is basically celery. There's a lot of green in it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that time. Yeah, other than that, I'm going to try and focus on spending time with them. And oh dear, I totally realised I have to tell Rita Modal about how to play Dinosaurs Love Spicy Pies. I will reach out to Rita Modal about Dinosaurs Love Spicy Pies, which is a game that we're working on together that I might have dropped the ball on very slightly. And yeah, generally trying to read through my things and have some sort of clear out, tidy up, decide some things to take back down, decide some things that I'm going to give away. But yeah, and thank you for sharing in that excitement. Claire Llewellyn is going to the river and eating a picnic. That sounds delightful. Is it sunny where you are? I hope you have a lovely day. And of course, I am going to be streaming every day at about 10 a.m. UK time. Tomorrow will be a chat with Flavien Loisier, a French person who is working on distribution for games coming from Hachette. Hachette, for those who don't know, is a very big company in France. It's one of the biggest book publishers, and then it started buying companies, and it's nowhere near the size of Asmodee for those who know board game companies, but within France, I think it's now bought Gigamic, it's now bought We're French, and it's bought a couple of other companies and brought them all together under this corporate umbrella. And Flavien Loisier is trying to be the new UK distributor for all of these games. If that happens, then of course for my own game, which is Yogi, then that would eventually be distributed by Flavien Loisier, so there's a wee bit of bias there. But I'm very interested, just from an intellectual point of view, of how do you set up these things? How do you get, how does someone get started in distribution? On Tuesday, I'll be talking with some other board game designers, Matthew Dunstan, Alan Paul, Rita Modal, about integration of art and graphics into your things. When is it appropriate to do? How can you avoid spending too much time or potentially even money on your graphics? What is the designer's responsibility? What is the publisher's responsibility? So that will be an in-depth discussion. In the evening at 8 p.m. UK time, I will be playing a quick word game, Balanceable, that you can play along with. So on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. UK time, you can always play along with the game. Please let me know if you would like to jump in on video, and if you want to just be in chat and play along, you also can. Wednesday, meeting Ethan Ulfield. Ethan is the person behind the Mind Sports Olympiad, which is some people who try to turn board games into a serious sport. And so, of course, you've got video game sports, you've got like esports, and so why not board games as sports? And Eaton even came up with this thing called diving chess. Eaton's invented a game where the time that you get to think in your move in chess is exactly how much time you can spend underwater. If you come back up and you haven't made your move yet, you lose. And so we'll be talking about the nature of competition, why that matters. On Thursday, I'll be singing a few songs. I'll be performing. I'll get my keyboard just over here, and I'll try and perform a variety of songs and maybe doing some vague things for an hour. Expect some of these streams over the next week to be a bit shorter than usual. Before, I've been going on for maybe 2 hours or so, sometimes even 3, and even reaching 4 hours once or twice. But for the next week, expect very short shows because after the musical shenanigans, Friendly Friday Forum is always happening, and on Friday afternoon, I have a train to catch to head back down. And yeah, next Saturday, mentoring Dutch Yoda, and next Sunday, I will be reviewing something, possibly even reviewing. Maybe I'll do a retrospective of this show and kind of reviewing roughly where I am, because it's been about 50 episodes. We're about halfway through the season, because I define one season as 100 episodes. Anyway, it has been lovely to chat. Thank you for being an audience. Thank you, everyone. Please share, spread the word. I am going to quickly check who else is doing things on. Whoops. Going to. Is there anybody actually here? Yeah. So, Timmy, I am going to suggest that we go to Juego de Masa. Yeah, let's raid Juego de Masas, who is a Spanish stream, and let's go in and check in on them. They are comparing 2 different games, and if you're joining me in this raid, then please do use some of this. Raid Juegos Masa. Just because there are board games, and it's quite exciting to see someone else up who's also doing board game stuff. So that is now the end of the show. Once more, thank you so much for being part of here, and bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. Now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. And bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. 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 Bye, 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 bye. This is goodbye song. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.